One day, I realized the house was full, but my place in it was empty. The distance did not come in one day, it came slowly, so slowly that I did not notice it at first. Like dust settling on furniture I stopped touching. Like silence growing in rooms that were once full of noise. I remember the exact moment I realized something had changed. It was not a fight, it was not harsh words, it was a smile, a polite one, the kind you give when your heart is already somewhere else. Saad stood at the door that evening, keys in his hand, shoes half worn. He looked at me and said, "Mom, we'll be late today." That was all. No explanation, no warmth. Just a sentence, neatly placed between us like a wall. I smiled back. Because mothers do that. We smile even when something inside us quietly breaks. That night, I sat alone at the dining table. 3 plates were already set. I did not move them. I just sat there, listening to the clock. Tick, tick. Each sound felt louder than my thoughts. This is not a story about anger. It is not about blame. It is about distance. The kind that grows quietly after your son gets married. I am Saad's mother, and this is my story. When Saad married Sana, everyone told me how lucky I was. She is educated. She is soft-spoken. She will take care of you. I nodded every time that I believed them. Why wouldn't I? On the wedding day, I looked at Sana sitting beside my son. Her eyes were lowered, her dupatta was placed perfectly, she looked calm, respectful, new. I remember thinking, this girl will become my daughter. I did not know then that some daughters come with invisible boundaries. The house was full that week. Relatives, laughter, voices overlapping. The smell of food stayed in the air all day. Saad moved around the house like a child again, laughing loudly, calling me again and again. "Mom, did you see this? Mom, where is that?" I felt needed. I felt full. Sana stayed mostly quiet. She helped in the kitchen, she smiled when spoken to, she never complained. Everyone said, "She is very well-mannered." I agreed. The first small change came after the guests left. The house became quiet again, not peaceful, just quiet. Sana began waking up later than me. I would already be in the kitchen when she came in. She would greet me politely. "Assalamu alaikum, Mom." I always replied warmly, "Walaikum assalam, son." But something felt careful. Like we were both walking on a floor that might crack. Saad stopped joining me for morning tea. He said he was busy. He said Sana needed rest. I understood. Or at least, I told myself I did. Mothers are very good at explaining things away. One afternoon, I folded Saad's clothes like I had done all his life. Sana walked in and paused. She watched silently for a moment. Then she said, gently, "Mom, I can do this." Her voice was soft, respectful. I laughed lightly and said, "I know, son. I was just helping." She smiled, but her smile did not reach her eyes. That day, I folded the clothes and placed them neatly aside, but something else folded inside me too. The distance was still very small then. Like a thin thread, easy to ignore. But threads, when pulled gently every day, become ropes. At dinner, Saad started sitting closer to Sana, not beside me, not across from me. They spoke in low voices. Shared looks I could not read. I ate quietly. I listened more than I spoke. Once, I asked Saad, "Do you want more curry?" He looked at Sana before answering. "No, Mom. We're fine." The word stayed with me long after dinner ended. I began noticing silence more than sound. The sound of their bedroom door closing. The sound of whispers stopping when I entered a room. I told myself it was normal. New marriage. New habits. Still, at night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The fan hummed softly, the house felt bigger than before. I remembered nights when Saad would come to me with his worries. Exams, friends, life. Now, he shared those things with someone else. I was proud of him. I truly was. But pride and loneliness often sit together. One evening, rain started falling suddenly. The sky turned grey, the windows fogged up. I made tea for all of us. I placed the cups on the tray carefully. When I reached their room, the door was closed. I knocked softly. No answer. I waited, then knocked again. Saad opened the door halfway. "Yes, Mom." I lifted the tray slightly. "Tea?" He hesitated for a second, then said, "We already had some." I nodded. Okay. I turned back without saying anything else. The tea went cold on the kitchen counter, just like the space between us. That night, I cried quietly, not loudly, not with sobs. Just tears sliding down silently so no one would hear. Because mothers are not supposed to feel replaced, but we are supposed to feel grateful. I started spending more time alone, sitting near the window, watching people pass by. I watched other women my age walking with their daughters, laughing, talking freely. I wondered if Sana and I would ever talk like that, or if we would always speak in careful sentences. One day, Saad came home late again and I was waiting. Dinner was ready. He said, "Mom, you don't have to wait for us." I smiled and replied, "I know." But inside, I thought, if I stop waiting, will anyone notice? The distance had grown a little more by then, still quiet, still unnamed. But I felt it in my chest, like a slow ache. I loved my son, but I respected my daughter-in-law. And yet, I felt like a guest in my own home. This was only the beginning. The part where no one sees the pain yet. Where everything looks fine from outside. But inside, something is slowly slipping away. And I did not know then how far that distance would grow. Before Sana came into our lives, Saad and I shared a rhythm, a simple one. Quiet mornings, warm evenings. Small habits that stitched our days together. I raised Saad mostly on my own. His father passed away when Saad was still young. From that day on, my world became smaller, but deeper. Everything I did for him. I woke up early every morning, I packed his lunch, I waited for him to come home from school, I listened to his stories, even when I was tired. When he laughed, the house felt alive. When he was quiet, I worried. That is how motherhood works. Your heart learns another person's heartbeat. Saad grew into a calm and respectful boy. He never raised his voice, he never disrespected elders. People often told me, "You raised him well." I always replied, "I just loved him." When Saad told me he wanted to marry Sana, I did not say no. I saw happiness in his eyes. That was enough for me. He said, "Mom, she is kind. She understands me." I nodded. I trusted his judgment. The families met. The talks were polite. Everything moved quickly after that. During the engagement, Sana sat beside me. She held my hand once. Briefly, her palm was warm. I remember thinking, this girl is nervous. She will need time. I promised myself I would give her that time. After the wedding, when Sana came to live with us, I tried to make her comfortable. I showed her where everything was kept. The spices, the utensils, the extra blankets. I told her, "Son, this is your home now." She smiled and replied, "Thank you, Mom." But homes are not made by words alone, they are made by comfort, and comfort takes time. In the early days, Sana was very careful. She woke up early, she dressed modestly, she asked before doing anything, "Mom, should I add more salt? Mom, is this how Saad likes his tea?" I answered patiently. Sometimes I guided her, sometimes I stepped back. I did not want her to feel controlled. I remembered my own early days of marriage. The pressure, the fear of making mistakes. So I stayed gentle. Saad, however, changed without realizing it. He became quieter with me, not rude, just distant. He used to sit beside me in the evenings, now he sat in his room. He used to ask for my opinion. Now he decided things on his own. That is also part of growing up, I told myself. Still, it hurt a little. One afternoon, Sana rearranged the kitchen. She moved things around. Put the cups in a new cabinet. Shifted the spices to a different shelf. When I entered, I felt lost in my own kitchen. I could not find the sugar. I laughed softly and said, "Son, I don't know where anything is now." She looked slightly uncomfortable. I thought this would be easier. I nodded. Yes, of course. That night, I searched for things quietly, opening one cabinet after another. I did not ask her to change it back. Some changes are small, but they remind you that things are no longer yours alone. Dinner times also changed. Earlier, we ate together, talked about our day. Now, Saad and Sana often ate later, sometimes in their room. I would sit alone, waiting. Then I would hear footsteps, plates clinking. They would say, "Mom, you ate already?" I would answer, "Yes." Even when I hadn't. Sana was not unkind, that is important to say. She never shouted, she never insulted me. But she kept a distance, a respectful one, a careful one. She never shared her worries with me. Never asked for advice. She spoke more to Saad, and that was natural. Still, I felt like a guest watching my own family from the outside. Sometimes, I wanted to tell Saad how I felt, but every time I opened my mouth, I stopped myself. I did not want to sound jealous, I did not want to sound weak. So I stayed silent. Silence became my habit. One evening, I found an old photo album. Pictures of Saad as a child, his first school uniform, his shy smile. Sana sat beside me and looked at the pictures. She smiled politely. "He was very cute," she said. "Yes," I replied. I waited for her to ask Maud to stay a little longer. But she closed the album and stood up. "I need to check on dinner." I nodded. That album stayed on my lap for a long time. I started missing the little things. Saad calling my name, asking me to sit with him. Now, when I entered the room, conversations paused. Not because they were hiding anything, but because their world did not include me anymore. At night, I prayed quietly, not for myself but for peace. I asked God to keep my heart soft, not let bitterness grow. Because bitterness is heavy, and I was already carrying enough weight. The distance was growing, still slowly, still quietly. And no one noticed. The distance did not announce itself. It did not knock on the door. It slipped in quietly, like air through a small crack. At first, I thought it was just adjustment. New marriage. New responsibilities. I told myself to be patient. But patience does not stop pain. It only teaches you how to carry it silently. Small things began to change more often. Things that once felt natural now felt uncertain. I would enter the kitchen and pause. Sana would already be cooking. She would look up and smile politely. "Mom, I've almost finished," she would say. I would nod and step back. I did not want to interfere. But standing aside every day slowly makes you invisible. Saad started making decisions without telling me. Not important ones. Small ones. Buying new furniture, changing curtains, planning weekends. I would find out later through conversations, through passing comments. Once, I asked gently, "You didn't tell me you were changing the sofa." He replied calmly, "Oh, I thought it wasn't important." I smiled, of course. But inside, I wondered when I had stopped being important. Sana began spending more time in her room. The door stayed closed more often. I did not knock unless necessary. I did not want to disturb them. But sometimes, I stood outside with folded laundry, wondering if I should knock or turn back. Most days, I turned back. One morning, I woke up with a slight fever. Nothing serious, just weakness. I still went to the kitchen. I made breakfast. Habit is stronger than pain. Sana walked in and noticed me sitting down more often. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, "just a little tired." She nodded. "Oh." That was all. I waited for her to say more to offer help. She did not. Saad came home late that evening. I mentioned my fever casually. He said, "Why didn't you rest?" I smiled. "I'm fine now." He nodded and went to his room. That night, I felt something heavy settle in my chest. Not sadness, not anger. Just realization. I began noticing how often Sana spoke for Saad, answered questions meant for him, decided things on his behalf. Once, a relative asked Saad, "When are you planning to visit us?" Before he could answer, Sana said, "We're very busy these days." Saad smiled and agreed. I sat quietly. The home felt divided into spaces. Their room my room. Earlier, the house felt shared. Now, it felt organized into corners. I stayed in mine. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation. Not intentionally, I was passing by their room. Sana's voice was low but clear. "Mom doesn't need to be involved in everything." There was silence after that. I did not wait to hear more. I walked away. My steps felt heavy, like each one carried weight. That sentence stayed with me, echoed in my mind again and again. I stopped giving opinions after that, even when asked. "Mom, what do you think?" Saad would sometimes ask. I would smile and say, "Whatever you both decide is fine." And slowly, He stopped asking. The dining table felt longer now, the silence louder. Sometimes, Sana and Saad would laugh softly at something on their phones. I would watch them quietly. I was happy they were close. I truly was. But happiness mixed with loneliness tastes bitter. One day, Sana invited her parents over. She informed me politely they'll be coming on Sunday. I nodded, of course. I prepared everything carefully. Cleaned the house. Cooked their favorite dishes. During the visit, Sana was lively. Laughing. Talking freely. I watched her and realized something painful. She was comfortable. Just not with me. After they left, the house fell silent again. I sat in the living room alone. Saad came in and said, "Thank you, Mom. Everything was perfect." I smiled. "You're welcome." But I wished he had stayed longer, sat beside me, talked to me. He didn't. That night, I felt tired in a way sleep could not fix. I lay awake, listening to the house breathe. I wondered if Sana ever felt lonely too, or if her loneliness had already found a place. I began to feel like I was walking on thin ice, afraid to say too much, afraid to say too little, afraid of being misunderstood. So I said nothing. One evening, Saad said casually, "Sana thinks it would be better if you rested more and let her manage the house." His tone was gentle, concerned. But the words cut deep. I replied softly, "Yes, she's right." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I felt old. Not in years, in relevance. The distance had grown enough by then to be felt clearly. Still, no one spoke about it. We smiled. We stayed polite. We avoided uncomfortable truths. But silence does not heal. It only hides wounds. And I did not know yet that something was coming. Something that would make this quiet pain impossible to ignore. The moment that changed everything did not come with shouting. It did not come with tears in front of others. It came quietly, like all the other changes. It happened on an ordinary day, the kind of day no one remembers, except me. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I could not sleep well the night before and my chest felt heavy, and my head ached. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, listening to the early sounds of the house. The distant call of birds, the soft hum of the fan. I told myself to stay in bed, rest. But old habits are difficult to break. I went to the kitchen slowly. The floor felt cold under my feet. I started preparing breakfast without thinking. As I reached for a pot, my hand slipped, the pot fell, the sound was loud. Sana came running in. Saad followed behind her. "What happened?" Saad asked, worried. "I'm fine," I said quickly, "it just slipped." Sana looked at the floor, then at me. She took a deep breath and said something that changed everything. "Mom, you really shouldn't be doing this anymore." Her voice was calm, not angry, almost caring. But her next words stayed with me. "You should rest in your room. We can manage." There was a silence after that, a long one. I looked at Saad. I waited for him to say something. He did not. He just stood there, quiet. That silence spoke louder than any words. I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said, "you're right." I picked up the fallen pot with shaky hands. I placed it on the counter. No one stopped me. I walked back to my room quietly, closed the door behind me, and for the first time, I felt truly alone in my own home. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. My hands rested in my lap. I was not angry. I was not even surprised. I just felt removed. Like a piece of furniture that had served its purpose. That afternoon, I stayed in my room and no one came to check on me. I heard them moving around the house. Talking. Laughing softly. Life continued. Without me. Later that evening, Saad came into my room. He knocked lightly. "Mom." "Yes," I replied. He stood near the door, not coming closer. "Sana is just worried about you," he said. "She thinks you should rest more." I smiled gently. "I know." He nodded, then said, "We're thinking of setting up the house differently. Just to make things easier." I understood what he meant, easier for them. "That's fine," I replied. He hesitated, then left. That night, I cried for a long time. Not because of what was said, but because of what was not. He did not ask how I felt. He did not sit beside me. And I realized something painful. My son had grown, but I had been left behind. The next few days passed quietly, that I stayed mostly in my room. Sana handled the house. The kitchen smelled different now. New spices, new routines. I ate alone most days. Sometimes they brought food to my room, sometimes they forgot. I never complained. One afternoon, I overheard Sana talking on the phone. She didn't know I was nearby. She said, "It's better this way. She won't get tired, and we'll have our space." I stood still, not moving. She wasn't cruel, she wasn't wrong. But she wasn't mine either. That evening I made a decision quietly. I would stop expecting. No expectations, no disappointments. I folded my clothes myself. I cleaned my room slowly. I placed old photos in a box. Memories need space too. One night, Saad came into my room again. He sat on the chair this time. "Mom," he said softly, "are you upset with us?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the boy I raised. And the man he had become. "No," I said honestly. "I'm just learning." "Learning what?" he asked. "Learning to let go," I replied. He looked confused. Then quiet. After that conversation, something inside me settled. Not healed. Just settled. I stopped waiting at the door. Stopped setting 3 plates. I ate when I was hungry. Slept when I was tired. The house felt different now. Calmer, colder. But I was calmer too. That was the turning point. The day I stopped being part of the center of my son's life. Not because I was pushed out, but because I stepped back. After that day, my life became smaller. Not empty, just quieter. I stopped trying to be seen. I stopped trying to be needed. I woke up when my body allowed me to. I prayed. I made tea for myself. The kitchen was no longer mine, but I did not feel angry. I felt like a guest who knew it was time to stay in her room. Sana managed the house well, I will give her that. The meals were on time. The house was clean. Saad looked content. That should have been enough. And in many ways it was. Sometimes Sana would knock on my door. "Mom, did you eat?" I would answer, "Yes." Sometimes it was true. Sometimes it wasn't. But I had learned not to expect care. Saad came into my room less often now. When he did, it was usually to inform me of something. "We'll be out this weekend. Friends are coming over." I nodded each time. I listened more than I spoke. I began finding comfort in small things. Sunlight through the window. The sound of birds in the morning. I started reading again. Old books. Slow pages. I found peace in routines that did not include anyone else. One afternoon I fell slightly ill again. This time it was worse. I felt dizzy and weak. I did not tell anyone. I rested quietly. But Sana noticed I had not come out all day. She knocked and entered my room. "Mom, you don't look well," she said. I smiled weakly. "I'm fine." She stood there for a moment, unsure. "I'll bring you some soup," she said. She did. She placed it gently on the table. Did not stay. But that small act mattered. That evening, Saad came to see me. He looked tired. "Mom," he said, "why don't you tell us when you're not feeling well?" I looked at him calmly. "You both have enough to manage," I replied. "I don't want to add to it." He frowned slightly. "You're not a burden." I smiled. "I know. But knowing something and feeling it are different things." I stopped giving advice completely. Even when Sana struggled. Even when Saad looked confused. I let them learn. Just like I once did. Letting go is not easy. But holding on hurts more. One evening, Sana sat with me unexpectedly. She held her cup of tea tightly. "Mom," she said, "I hope you don't feel bad about anything." I looked at her. Really looked at her. She looked nervous, young. "I don't," I said honestly. She relaxed slightly. "I'm still learning," she added quietly. So was I. That conversation did not fix everything. But it softened something between us. We were no longer trying to replace each other. We were simply two women learning our places. Saad began visiting my room a little more often after that. He would sit for a few minutes, ask simple questions. How was your day? I would answer honestly. Quiet. And that was enough. I realized something important during that time. Children do not leave their parents. They just move forward. And sometimes parents have to stay behind. Not because they are unloved, but because love changes shape. I stopped feeling sorry for myself, that I stopped comparing. This was my new role, a quieter one, but still meaningful. The distance was still there, but it no longer hurt the same way. I had learned how to live with it, and slowly something unexpected began to happen. Not closeness. Not yet, but understanding. Time has a quiet way of teaching lessons. It does not explain, it simply shows. Months passed. Seasons changed. The house stayed the same, but the people inside it grew into new versions of themselves. I was one of them. I learned how to live without waiting, without watching the clock, without listening for footsteps that might not come. I woke up with a morning light that I prayed for strength. Not to hold on, but to accept. Acceptance is not defeat, it is understanding. Sana became more confident in her role. She moved around the house freely now, no hesitation. I watched her from a distance. Not with jealousy, but with calm. She was building her life, just like I once did. One evening she came into my room holding a folded shawl. "Mom, it's getting cold," she said. I looked at the shawl. It was mine. She had washed and folded it neatly. "Thank you," I said. She smiled, a real one this time. It was a small moment, but it mattered. Saad started sitting with me again sometimes. Not for long, but enough. We talked about simple things. The weather. Old memories. Once he said softly, "You've changed, Mom." I smiled. Yes. He did not ask how. I no longer felt invisible, that I no longer felt replaced. Felt settled. The distance was still there, but it had softened like a scar that no longer aches. I understood something then. A mother's place does not disappear, it transforms. One night I sat alone in the living room. The lights were dim. The house was quiet. I thought about everything I had lost. And everything I had gained. I had lost closeness, but I had gained peace. I realized that love does not always mean being needed. Sometimes it means stepping aside without resentment. It means trusting that what you gave was enough. On a Sunday morning, Saad and Sana invited me to sit with them for breakfast. We ate together quietly. No pressure, no expectations. Just shared space. As I sipped my tea, I felt something warm in my chest. Not sadness. Not regret. Gratitude. The distance grew slowly after my son married. But so did my understanding. And in that understanding I found my strength. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this. Do not hold your children too tightly. Love them enough to let them go. Because when love is quiet, it does not disappear, it simply learns how to wait differently. Time has a way of teaching lessons without words. Days passed. Weeks followed. Life settled into a new shape. Not the shape I once imagined, but a shape I learned to accept. I no longer waited for Saad to come home. If he did, I welcomed him. If he didn't, I went to bed peacefully. I no longer listened for footsteps outside my door. If someone knocked, I opened it with warmth. If no one came, I stayed content with myself. This was not bitterness, it was balance. Sana and I learned each other slowly. Not as mother and daughter, but as two women sharing a space. Sometimes she asked small questions. About cooking. About traditions. I answered when I could. And stayed quiet when I felt unsure. We were careful, but not cold. One evening we sat together during a power cut. The house was dark. Only candlelight between us. Sana spoke softly. "My mother says every home takes time." I nodded. She is right. That was all. But in that moment I felt something ease inside me. Saad watched us from a distance. I could see relief in his eyes. He did not need us to be close, he just needed us to be okay. And we were. I began going out more. Visiting old friends. Spending time at the mosque. I built a world beyond my son. Something I should have done long ago. Motherhood is beautiful. But it should not be the only thing a woman is. One afternoon, Saad came to my room and sat beside me. Not on the chair, on the bed. "Mom," he said quietly, "I hope you know I still need you." I looked at him and smiled. "I know," he added. "I just don't know how to show it sometimes." I placed my hand on his. "Neither did I replied. That day, I understood something clearly. Distance does not always mean loss. Sometimes it means growth. I stopped measuring love by closeness, I stopped counting words and visits. Love does not disappear when children marry, it changes its language. And parents must learn to listen differently. Now, when I sit alone at night, I do not feel emptied, I feel complete in a quieter way. The house still has silence. But it no longer scares me. Silence can also mean peace. If I could speak to my younger self, I would say this. Do not hold your children so tightly that you forget yourself. Do not expect your place to remain the same forever. Because love does not mean staying in the center. Sometimes love means stepping aside with grace. The distance grew slowly after my son married. Yes, but so did my strength. And in that strength, I found a new kind of love. One that does not beg, one that does not wait. One that simply is. Time has a gentle way of teaching lessons without using words. Days passed. Weeks followed. Nothing dramatic happened. No big apologies, no emotional speeches. Just life moving forward quietly. I learned to live inside the new shape of my family. It did not look like the old one, but it was still a family. Some mornings, Sana would ask from the kitchen, "Mom, would you like tea?" Sometimes I said yes. Sometimes I said no. Both answers were accepted. That was new. Saad stopped rushing through conversations. He began sitting for a few minutes longer. Not like before, but longer than nothing. Once he said softly, "Mom, you seem calmer these days." I smiled. "I am." And I meant it. I stopped measuring love by attention. Stopped counting how many times someone came to my room. Love does not disappear, it changes its voice. Sometimes it speaks loudly. Sometimes it whispers. One evening the electricity went out. The house was dark and quiet. We all sat in the living room together, no phones, no distractions. Sana lit a candle. The light was soft. For a few moments we just sat there. Breathing. Sharing the same space. Saad said something simple. "This reminds me of childhood." I looked at him, so did Sana. And for the first time I felt included again. Not as the center, but as part of the circle. Later that night, Sana helped me walk to my room. She held my arm lightly. "Mom, if you ever need anything, please tell me," she said. Her voice was sincere. I nodded. "I will." And this time I believed myself. I understood something very important then. Sana did not come to take my place. She came to make her own. And Saad did not move away from me, he moved toward his future. There is a difference. I stopped seeing the distance as rejection, I started seeing it as space. Space for him to grow. Space for her to settle. Space for me to rediscover myself. Some nights, I still miss the old days. That will never change. Memories do not disappear. They sit quietly in the heart. But they no longer make me cry. They make me smile. Now, when I sit alone by the window, I do not feel forgotten, I feel peaceful. I watch the world pass by, I pray, I breathe. I am still a mother. Just not the kind who holds on tightly anymore. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this. Children do not leave us when they marry. They just walk ahead. And love means letting them go without closing your heart. The distance did grow slowly after my son married. But so did my strength. And in that quiet strength, I found myself again. Sometimes love is not about being close. Sometimes it is about learning how to stand peacefully a few steps behind, with grace, patience, and an open heart.